Good afternoon, everyone. Andy Jacob here with the Entrepreneur Spotlight Series for DotCom Magazine. And today's guest, I've been waiting to get on the show now for a number of months. This is a very special show because we have Mr. Kevin Schmiegel. And Kevin is the CEO of the national nonprofit Operation Gratitude. I know you've probably heard of them already, but we are so excited to have Kevin on the show to talk about all the great work they're doing with the first responders and everybody else. Kevin, it's a real honor to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Andy. It's great to be here.
That's awesome. And I see some wonderful things behind you over your shoulder. You've got the American flag and a number of wonderful coins and distinctions and honors. Before we get started, why don't you tell us what's right behind you? Because I think that's a great way to start and it's very interesting.
Well, sure. Actually, just above my head, you'll see a sword that was actually carried by my father, who was also an officer in the United States Marine Corps in the 1960s. So that sword is actually 57 years old.
Wow.
And he handed it to me the day I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps in 1989. I served for 20 years, and that flag behind me with the challenge coins is what they're called, represent 20 years of service and more than 50 deployments to more than 50 countries around the world.
Wow, that is outstanding. And to have those swords hanging under your challenge pieces is obviously very, very dear to your heart and to your family's heart. And that's probably one of the reasons why you started Operation Gratitude. And it's growing by leaps and bounds. It's giving everyday people a chance to give back, to say thank you to all the people that serve the country. Can you tell us a little bit more about Operation Gratitude and what it's all about?
Sure. I'd like to start with why I'm here. I think it's interesting. I mentioned my dad. I'm also the proud father of a Marine who served for 6 years. He just separated from the United States Marine Corps and is finishing up his bachelor's degree at a university here in Virginia. But my son, Carl, is part of the reason I'm at Operation Gratitude. I, as a father who served in the Marine Corps myself for 20 years, was there for Carl the day he enlisted in the Marine Corps at the recruiter's office. I was there the day he graduated from boot camp in Parris Island. And I was certainly there for him to send him letters of support and care packages when he was deployed and when he was at training schools across the country. But Carl is the exception, not the norm. So many young people who serve in our military are not only looking for an opportunity to serve our country, but they're looking for a better way of life and a chance to prove themselves. And so many men and women who deploy, who I've seen in more than 50 countries during my deployments, never got care packages, never got letters. And that is part of the reason I'm at Operation Gratitude. The other reason is I believe it's important for organizations like Operation Gratitude, who have 1 million volunteers across the country, to go beyond saying thank you for your service. We have an opportunity as an organization to create a better understanding of service, to create empathy, and to build bridges between civilians and our military veterans and first responders. When I talk about what's commonly referred to as the civilian-military divide, that's not a lack of appreciation. Americans want to say thank you. But we need to go a step beyond that. We need to create understanding so our men and women deployed overseas and their families left behind at home feel the warm embrace of the community around them and know that they understand and empathize with their service and the sacrifices they make in service to our nation. Operation Gratitude is the largest nonprofit in the country for hands-on volunteerism in support of military, veterans, and first responders. 1 million volunteers last year alone made hand-knit and crocheted scarves. They sent us 400,000 of these bracelets, one of which I wear on my wrist, and thank you cards just like this, 1.1 million letters and cards of appreciation. What is really remarkable is so many people will talk about Operation Gratitude as an organization that just does care packages or just says thank you. It's actually so much more than that. what we do with our care packages, those are vehicles or means to an end. And it allows Americans to express appreciation, but there's also recognition on the service side. So military and their family members, veterans, and first responders realize that those civilians who made those scarves by hand, who made those bracelets, who wrote those letters, or who come as an entire community to assemble the care packages that we ship all over the world and all over this country, came together in service. And that is the common bond that all Americans share. They want to serve our country and they want to serve one another. And right now in this country, that's important to recognize, because I feel that the word divide defines a lot of the issues that we have right now. And we believe as an organization that we can bring communities together through a common bond of service and gratitude.
See, I love that. And the way in which it started with your father and you and your son, and you having this idea to build this Operation Gratitude through service is an amazing idea. And it makes all the sense in the world, because so many of us that live in America, we're so thankful for our freedom, and we're so thankful for all the people that serve on our behalf for the United States flag, if you will. And a lot of us just don't know how to sort of give our gratitude to the people. So what you've been able to do is really solve a big problem, because a lot of people don't know really what to do or where to turn or how to say thank you or how to send something or just do something to show the gratitude to the people that are out there really working and protecting us on our behalf and making sure that our American flag stays strong. And you've been able to put together this seamless program where we can now show our gratitude in a very meaningful way. So I wanted to thank you for doing that.
Yeah. And, I should clarify, I've been with the organization for 3 years, and the story of how the organization started is actually more compelling than the reason I'm here. Our founder, Carolyn Blaschick, grew up in New York City and was deeply impacted by the terrorist attacks of 9/11. She had family there, she had friends there, and the very next day, which I love, on September 12th of 2001, she tried to enlist in the United States Marine Corps, believe it or not, and was turned away because she was in her mid-40s at the time, didn't meet the minimum age requirement, which was, I think, 26 or 27. I'm sure the Marine turned her away politely. She heard the same thing from the Air Force, Coast Guard, and Army recruiters, but she wanted to give back to our men and women in uniform. And she started volunteering at the USO lounge at LAX at the airport. And one day a soldier walked in 18 months later in March of 2003, and he was clearly down in the dumps, despondent, asked to see a chaplain. And it was a Saturday, no chaplain on duty. So Carolyn, talked to him and drew out from him that he was home on emergency leave for his sole surviving parent's funeral. His mother had passed away. And while he was home, his wife left him, and he lost his only infant son to a sudden illness. And he literally had no one in his life. And he said to Carolyn, I'm going back to a combat zone. I'm going back to Iraq. And I know I'm not coming home, but it wouldn't matter because no one would care. And this is where Operation Gratitude was born. And Carolyn wanted to show him and service members like him that there were people back home who cared. And around her dining room table with a few friends, she assembled the first 4 care packages in March of 2003. Fast forward 17 years later, and on February 29th, before COVID hit, I was with 1,100 volunteers in Southern California in our warehouse, 35,000 square foot warehouse. We assembled 15,000 care packages in just 3 hours with 600,000 individual items, because she created a grassroots movement where everyone across the country wanted to do exactly what you said. They wanted to give back. They wanted to say thank you. And she created this foundation for me as someone who served for 20 years, who ran 2 other large nonprofits called Hiring Our Heroes and Thanks USA, and said, I want you to take this across the country. And for the last 16 months before COVID, we not only did that in Los Angeles every month for those 16 months, but we went to San Antonio, Jacksonville, Florida, Washington, D.C., Philly, Baltimore, New York, Cincinnati, all the way down to Nashville, all the way across back to San Diego. We brought together 5,000 grateful Americans. They assembled 100,000 care packages. And they were standing side by side in service, these civilian families, with military veterans, first responders and their families. And they made 100,000 care packages. 30,000 went to deployed troops. 30,000 went to our nation's newest service members graduating from boot camp, like my son Carl did 6 years ago. And 40,000 of them, Andy, were hand delivered by those volunteers to every police officer, firefighter, and EMT in 8 of those 9 cities. And we made connections, right? We created more than just an opportunity to say thank you. We enabled conversations between these civilians who wanted to say thank you and give back, but also wanted to go a step beyond and serve. And they were able to talk about what it's like to deploy for 9 months away from your kids, what it's like to be a police officer and have your kid block you from going out the front door because they're afraid you're not coming back. Those conversations are important to build and strengthen our communities and really unite our country.
See, that's unbelievable. Carolyn took the tragedy of 9/11. She turned it into a positive by helping someone in need, and then took action steps to begin something that's become really this amazing movement. And what you say is very, very important, Kevin, because that is true. There's so many of us that not only want to participate by maybe sending money to Operation Gratitude or participating in service by putting some packages together with some other people, but many of us don't really have the opportunity to even speak with the first responders or speak with someone that's in the Army or the Marines or the Air Force or the Navy or the Coast Guard. And that is a very compelling opportunity when you get to really meet these people that lay it on the line for us all the time. You know, something at the beginning of the interview that kind of caught my attention was the wristband that you're wearing, and you had a stack of wristbands. Tell us the story behind the wristbands. I think a lot of people would like to know what's going on with those wristbands.
Yeah, so these Paracord survival bracelets are handmade by our volunteers again. And in this first generation, we actually made a much more intricate one. So this was made before I became the CEO, and they clasp on a wrist for old veterans like me that might have problems putting it on the wrist. But we also created what's called a quick release Paracord bracelet. And this is actually bound on itself and it creates a knot. But look at what this bracelet represents. Look at this circle that's formed. And these bracelets, which I make now on every single one of my calls with companies and partners and volunteers, are actually made in a way where deployed service members, first responders, and even veterans who receive them can quickly deploy them. So they're called quick deploy or quick release Paracord bracelets. And it becomes the 7.5-foot cord that they start with. So imagine when we share these bracelets, we put them in a nice pouch and a card that says, if you used a bracelet for any reason, share your story and we'll send you another one. And thank God we've never gotten one that said they've been used for a tourniquet or emergency life-saving procedures. But a soldier in Afghanistan about 5 months ago wrote us to say that he used the bracelet to replace the sling on his M4 rifle. So he doubled the bracelet up and attached it to his shoulder. Now a rifle weighs 12 pounds. Could you imagine carrying a rifle around for 2 weeks before you get to a supply warehouse? 3 Marines were on a 7-ton truck, and the fuel cans, the straps broke off. They deployed their bracelets and strapped the fuel cans back on the truck in Iraq so they could keep up with their convoy. One Marine who wound up serving as our first ever vice president of operations received a care package in Afghanistan. And he and his Marines were in a firefight. And it was dark and late at night in horrible terrain, and the helicopter pilot could not spot them. He attached one of those illumination sticks that you use camping. You snap them, they glow in the dark, and like a lasso, whirled it around his head, and the Marine helicopter pilot zoomed in and extracted them. So it literally saved lives. And really, you know, these bracelets, when they're included in our care packages, along with the scarves and the handwritten letters, are are such a great way to demonstrate appreciation, and they make such a profound impact that I don't think our volunteers or everyday Americans understand that the person who receives it has that acknowledgement that someone took the time to make it. And listen, we're coming up on the end of the year. Operation Gratitude is going to send 20,000 care packages to deploy troops. They've been away from their family for months on end. Some of them have been extended because of COVID. And these care packages, to include the handmade items, will give them the strength and the courage and the resolve to carry on. And they will impact their families back home because they know their loved ones who are deployed overseas are comforted. So can't really stress the impact more than the stories that I've shared. But the last point I'll make, and you touched on it, is the fact that not many Americans are connected to military families. Back in World War II, 12% of our population served in the military. Today, less than 1% serve in our military. And less civilians are affiliated with a military family member because more and more families like mine, my son, serve because they see their fathers and their grandfathers serve. And what's happened is that understanding of what it's like to serve in the military has diminished, and that divide has grown. There's a Department of Justice study that shows only 1 in 5 Americans over the age of 18 have actually had a face-to-face interaction with a police officer. And I'm sure the 1 out of 5 that did have a face-to-face interaction didn't have a very good experience because they were probably in trouble for something. So what we solve for is not just an opportunity for people to say thank you. What we solve for is an opportunity for them to have a meaningful conversation that leads to understanding, that leads to empathy, and ultimately leads to a stronger military and stronger first responder departments and communities, because those servicemen and women and their families feel supported. And I can only share data that's been out there for more than a decade now. There's an organization that we partner with called Blue Star Families. They do a survey every year. And what it shows is more than 90% of military families don't feel that the service and sacrifices they make is understood. And that 92% is pretty significant, right? And more than half military families feel disconnected from their communities. So I think it's a really important time that we recognize those things. And as an organization, we are uniquely positioned to solve for some of those issues.
So that makes a lot of sense. And for people watching the show today, Kevin, let's say I'm interested in supporting, let's say, the first responders. Do you allow the people that want to support your organization to select whom they want to support in a meaningful way, or does it all go into one sort of generalized sort of tranche, if you will?
No, we absolutely allow people to support a specific community in service. So this year, Operation Gratitude has already impacted a service member, veteran, or first responder, or healthcare hero because of COVID, on average, every minute of the year, 526,000 already. So the way we enable that is on our site, we have a virtual volunteerism campaign. And when people select to write letters, in particular, letters of appreciation, they can find a way to do this for military veterans or first responders, and now healthcare heroes across the country.
That's amazing. So I can go on the website and I can, if I want to send my gratitude in a letter, the website tells me how to do it or who to send it to. How does all that work for people watching that want to get involved immediately on this program, which is so dynamic?
Yeah, so everything that people assemble with their hands, or that hand make or handcraft, like this, the scarves and the bracelets and the handwritten letters, come back to our warehouse in California. And we have a brigade of volunteers who physically read every single letter, who quality control and roll the scarves so that they fit in our packages. And they actually quality control every bracelet and put them in these little pouches that I told you about. And then we distribute them nationally and globally to deploy troops.
So if I have a child and let's say I have a family of 4 and everybody in the family wants to write a letter, we write the letter, we send that letter to you, and then your people read it to make sure it passes the mustard, and then you send it along in an Operation Gratitude like box for the service members.
That's absolutely right. And they don't have to send them in individual envelopes. They can send them in a box. And what you touched on is even more important. Operation Gratitude works with 17,000 community-based groups. So if you're a parent and you want to go to your child's 3rd grade teacher or 8th grade teacher, they can organize a letter writing campaign. We work with churches, Boy Scout troops, Girl Scout troops, kids sports teams, Rotary clubs, Kiwanis, Knights of Columbus, National Charity League, Boys and Girls Club of America, across the country, 17,000 groups, which is why we have 1 million volunteers. And we get, we don't get a box with just a handful of letters from a lot of those groups. We're talking thousands. Every year at this time, as we speak, thousands of pounds of candy are flowing into our warehouse. And what we've started to do, Halloween candy season hits, we collect between 360 and 500,000 pounds. Now we're encouraging, through the connections that we make with 700 police and fire departments who we've sent care packages to over the last 3 years, military units and families, veterans organizations, we're asking our volunteers, we make the connection first, and then they deliver them in person, right? So they're making that physical connection too. We can't do that for our deployed troops, which is our biggest program, but we can certainly do this at the local level. The point I want the listeners and the viewers to take away from this, Andy, is in the next weeks, in the next months, in the next years, they will meet a military family, a service member in the airport. They will meet a veteran who's wearing an old hat like I do from time to time that says Marine Veteran. They will meet a first responder. And I know, because I've seen it firsthand, they will walk up to them and they will say, thank you for your service. And most people will respond, thank you for your support. And then there's an awkward moment. They need to work through the awkward moment and ask questions. Just like I said earlier in the interview, if you talk about the challenges for military families, the challenges veterans faced when they served during our nation's longest war of the last 19 years, and in previous wars from World War II all the way to today, if they take the time to talk to a police officer, a firefighter, an EMT and their families, they will learn that they share the same neighbors, that their kids go to the same school, that they eat at the same restaurants, and that they share the same values and beliefs. And those values and beliefs are based on 2 fundamental principles that Operation Gratitude believes in. We believe that every American wants to serve, whether they're in uniform or not. And we believe that every American is grateful to live in this country and to serve one another. And I've seen it hundreds of times in my first few years in this role as the CEO of Operation Gratitude. It starts with a thank you for your service. We deliver our care packages, they're being handed out. And if you just stop and close your eyes and listen, it's really silent in the beginning and awkward. And then the volume rises because people are laughing and they're starting to understand that they do share the same beliefs and values based on service and gratitude. And it's even better when we are outside of COVID. And I mentioned those 9 cities in Los Angeles, and we get to bring in hundreds, if not thousands of people, and they represent every walk of life, every race, every color, every creed, every politic, every viewpoint you can imagine. And they forget that. They leave it at the door. And they're dancing and laughing and singing and talking. And, when I first started Operation Gratitude, I thought it would always be about our servicemen and women and their families. As someone who served for 2 decades and faced my own challenges, being deployed away from my own 3 kids, for 1,000 nights out of a 20-year career, not getting to tuck them into bed, eat dinner with them, ask them how their days went. But it became so much more than that. We have created a community of advocates, believers, and doers who are solving for a common purpose. And that common purpose is to embrace our servicemen and women, to close this gap, to bridge this divide, and to make our country stronger. And when you say a grassroots movement, that is a community of advocates, believers, and doers. And the sense of purpose that we give to our civilian volunteers is equally important to what we do for our servicemen and women, especially now during COVID-19, especially now.
That makes all the sense in the world. And I want to talk to you about talking to the servicemen when you see them out at a Starbucks or at a restaurant or at the airport. But before we get into that, so I'm a football coach. I'm not a football coach, but I'm just saying someone watching it is a football coach, or they're a basketball coach, or they have a team and they want to do something for the team. So they can go on Operation Gratitude's website and they can, let's say, get the team to all write letters. And then the whole team's letters go to Operation Gratitude, to your main headquarters and to your giant warehouse. And then your people read the letters and they put them in boxes. Can they also add additional things of football? And, maybe they could throw in some wristbands or something like that from the football team to let the people know how much they appreciate them.
Yeah. So two points to the question that you ask. First, we have a wish list on our website that shows the exact items that we would like, in addition to the handmade items that I share with you. The second thing, as our organization is evolving and changing and growing over the last 3 years in the communities across the country, like I said, with Halloween candy, we are now employing and using volunteer ambassadors at the local level. So we would connect that football team directly with our ambassadors at the local level, and they could actually organize their own service project, right? If you want to create a grassroots movement, if you want to make an impact across the country, you start to let those things happen organically at the community level. And we are seeing great success with that. We had a volunteer who started as a recipient of our care packages. Their children received these stuffed bears that we give to children of deployed troops. They're hand stuffed by volunteers across the country. This military spouse, Sarah Field, actually started as a recipient for her husband's squadron, where 60 kids got those bears. She then came to Philadelphia as a volunteer and brought military families to pay it forward, and they assembled care packages for first responders in Philadelphia. She then organized, as an ambassador, a delivery of those bears to a sister squadron on the base where her husband lived and worked. And just 3 weeks ago, for First Responder Appreciation Day, at a new duty station in Illinois, because they just moved from New Jersey, she organized the First Responder Appreciation Day as our ambassador. She connected the entire community in Illinois, military families, civilian families, with police officers, firefighters, and EMTs, the local chamber of commerce, the mayor's office, local media. She did that all on her own because she understood what we were trying to do, because she was on the other end of gratitude and she understood what it meant to serve. So that is the future of Operation Gratitude. Right now, I tell every corporation we work with and their employees who volunteer, just like we get on a Zoom call just like this, I tell them you can take Operation Gratitude from where you work to where you live. For those football coaches and community-based groups, I also tell everyday Americans who are volunteering, they can take Operation Gratitude from where they live and the volunteer groups in the community to where they work and their employers. And that's how we continue to grow and grow and grow. So on the website, when people click on virtual volunteerism right now, they'll see individuals, they'll see businesses, and they'll see groups. So that football coach would go to groups, he'd click on it, and there would be instructions for him or her on how to do it.
See, I love that. That's amazing. So you really have something for everyone, no matter how big or how small. It's all important. They're all equally important to show your service and gratitude, which I really love, Kevin. So let's backtrack just a little bit. Since I'm talking to the expert, a lot of times people who don't have this connection, like you mentioned, because they don't have a connection to a military family. They don't really understand what the military family goes through. And what the people in the military go through. And we're out and about, and let's just say we're at a restaurant, and there's that one might not be a good example because they might not be in uniform. Let's say we're at the airport and someone is in uniform. Is it appropriate to go up in your mind and start chat? And first of all, of course, tell them that you thank them for their service and then start asking them questions? Or do you feel that might be a little intrusive? What's the way that the people out here can show their gratitude to someone who they see in uniform and want to say, hey, my man, I just wanted to thank you for your service. We really appreciate you.
Well, our organization is,
or pardon me, not my man, or, young lady,
right.
you as well, pardon me.
Right. And our organization was founded under the premise that people should take actions to demonstrate their appreciation of service. I absolutely think that it's appropriate, again, whether they're in active duty military uniform, whether they're a veteran wearing a hat or they're a first responder in their day-to-day uniform serving our communities, that it's absolutely appropriate to say thank you for your service and take the next step and go beyond that and talk to them. I know not just from my own service, I know from my experience in the nonprofit sector that our military veterans and first responders would welcome that type of conversation and discussion, and they would contribute to that as well. And when I say there's a disconnect, it's on both sides. Military family members, service members, our veterans, our first responders need to do a better job of opening up about their service and being less modest and humble about the sacrifices they make. Because, Andy, this is not, the challenge we have is, and there's a discussion about this, about saying thank you for your service, not having meaning or being cliche. I don't think people can be farther from the truth when they say that, because that is the start of a conversation, but they have to go the next step. And I think service members and their families, veterans, first responders and their families acknowledge that too. And they have to go the next step too. And this is not about eliciting sympathy or pity for the unique sacrifices that servicemen and women and their families make. This is about creating that understanding. It's not about sympathy, it's about empathy. It's about celebrating their service and sacrifice. It's about celebrating their strength and their courage and their resilience. And by asking those questions and becoming more and more intimate with what they face, and you show them the community wants to understand better, they're going to feel integrated in the communities. They're going to feel like they're connected to their civilian neighbors. And I say it again and again and again, our military and first responders and our communities will be stronger.
Kevin, that's unbelievable. Thank you so much for sharing that, both on a corporate level as a 501c3, but also as a personal level, because some of these questions I had going in, I wanted to know for myself what the appropriate way to approach these people with gratitude and service was. So it's very, very enlightening for me. And I'm sure a lot of people watching will take a great interest in this. And if just one person that watches walks up to a serviceman, a man or woman, and thanks them for their service, that would be a beautiful thing. But as well as that, there's going to be people watching that want to participate in Operation Gratitude, I'm sure. So please let them know how they can participate. What's the website? Who can they call? How do they start engaging so that they can take their gratitude for the service members to the next level and become part of this amazing community that you've been able to put together with Operation Gratitude?
Yeah, the easiest way is definitely through our website, operationgratitude.com. We also have an email address, info@operationgratitude.com, for all general questions. And I think if they don't find the information on the website, they can certainly send that email and we'll get back to them right away. We answer our emails, and we also do something very unique as an organization. We personally thank every single volunteer, every single donor, every single supporter. And when I say thank them, I'm talking about calling them on the phone and thanking them in person. I mean, our name is Operation Gratitude, so it's important to recognize people who do step up. And I think you're exactly right, Andy. If we change one person's life, either a recipient or a volunteer who has a sense of purpose with Operation Gratitude, feels like they're making an impact, that will have a ripple effect across the country. And I truly believe that this organization over the next 5 years will prove that coming together, communities coming together in service and gratitude will unite the country.
I love it, Kevin. It's an honor, pardon me, it's an honor to have you on the show for everything you do at Operation Gratitude, all the people you represent, and all the good work you've done since Carolyn, your founder, after, a few days after 9/11 started. What you've been able to accomplish is amazing. Our hats off to you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Andy. It was great talking to you.
Thank you.